The night of July 10th, 1856, was born not of quiet darkness, but of pure electric chaos. In the small mountainous village of Smiljan, Croatia, a storm unlike any other tore across the land. Thunderclaps echoed like the roar of a celestial beast. Jagged bolts of lightning ripped the inky black sky wide open. Inside a simple church house, a new life struggled to enter the world. A mother, Duka, cried out in labor. Her husband, Miljutin, a Serbian Orthodox priest, paced the floor, his face etched with worry, his prayers lost to the fury of the storm. Then, at the very moment of birth, a blinding flash. A single, furious bolt of lightning struck the house with a deafening crack. The room was bathed in an eerie, otherworldly light. The midwife, a woman of faith and folklore, recoiled in terror, her eyes wide with superstition. She whispered, her voice trembling, that this child, born amidst such a maelstrom, was a child of darkness, that he was marked by the devil. But the mother Duka was not a woman of superstition. She was a woman of fierce intellect and quiet ingenuity. She looked down at her newborn son, held him close, and corrected the midwife with a calm, resolute certainty. Her voice, clear above the fading thunder, stating that this child will be a child of light. And so began the life of Nikola Tesla, a man forged in the heart of a storm, a visionary born in lightning, and destined to become its master. Welcome. I'm Tony Ray, and this is Historical Insights, a show that peels back the layers of history to reveal the hidden stories, the brilliant minds, and the epic struggles that shape our world. Today, we step into the extraordinary and often tragic world of Nikola Tesla. He was a man who seemed to belong to two different centuries at once. To some, he was the mad scientist, a lone eccentric with impossible dreams of death rays and free energy, a man who spoke to pigeons and was obsessed with the number 3. To others, though, he was a visionary, a prophet of the modern age, the one who truly invented the 20th century. While his rival, Thomas Edison, lit up individual homes with direct current, Tesla envisioned and engineered the entire electrical grid with his alternating current system. AC is the reason the lights in your home are on, the reason your phone is charged, the very foundation of the modern electrical world. But Tesla's genius didn't stop there. His mind roamed far beyond the current. He saw wireless power transmissions, radio communication, and even cosmic energy. His notebooks are filled with concepts that still astound scientists today. How did his birth and early life set the stage for his myth and legacy? How did his unique mind affect his creativity? What was his relationship with Thomas Edison like? Why did Tesla's reputation begin to shift from genius to mad scientist? Why was Tesla largely forgotten during his lifetime, but celebrated after his death? And what does Tesla's story reveal about the price of genius and the thin line between vision and madness? His story, as a whole, is one of breathtaking brilliance and profound tragedy. A story of triumph against a titan, betrayal by his closest allies, and a fall from grace that left him penniless and alone. He was a man who walked a tightrope between sanity and madness, between a glorious future and a lonely present. This is the insight into Nikola Tesla, master of lightning. Tesla's childhood was a mix of quiet rural life and an inner world of bewildering visions. He was born into a family of powerful but contrasting forces. His father, Milutin, was a severe, intellectually disciplined man. He demanded logic and reason, and he fully expected Nikola to follow him into the priesthood, a path of rigid order and solemn duty. But it was his mother Duca who truly understood him. Though she had no formal education, her hands were never idle. She was a natural-born inventor, crafting intricate mechanical devices and clever tools for the household. She taught him not just to memorize, but to create. It was from her, Tesla would later confess, that he inherited the spark of his genius, the ingenuity, not the intellect. From his earliest years, Tesla's mind worked on a different frequency. He could absorb entire books at a single glance. His memory so vivid it was photographic. He could solve complex mathematical equations in his head, often to the astonishment of his teachers. He called it visual thinking. He didn't just imagine his inventions, he built them, piece by agonizing piece, in a three-dimensional model inside his mind. He would run them mentally, test their flaws, and make corrections, all before ever drawing a single blueprint. But his extraordinary gift came with a terrifying price. Tesla was plagued by what he described as a curse, strange, overwhelming visions and hallucinations. They were triggered by bright lights or intense emotions. He would see blinding flashes, a cascade of intricate shapes and patterns that would pull him out of reality and into a world of pure, unmanageable light. He once wrote that the visions were as much a torment as they were a blessing. By the time he was an adolescent, his fascination with machines had become a full-blown obsession. He dismantled the clocks in his home and built small water wheels. He dreamed of harnessing the very power of the rivers around him. But his young life was also marked by a profound loss. When he was just 12, his older brother, Dane, a child his family saw as a prodigy, died in a tragic riding accident. The family was shattered. His father's expectations, once divided between the two sons, now fell entirely upon Nikola. He was left with the weight of his brother's memory and his father's expectations, alongside his mother's quiet encouragement. From that moment forward, Nikola was not just a child with a peculiar mind. He was a boy, haunted by grief, driven by visions, and consumed by a relentless, all-consuming need to create a new world, one powered by his own hands. Driven by relentless inner fire, a young Nikola Tesla left the sleepy hills of his homeland and journeyed to the heart of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In the grand city of Graz, he enrolled at the Polytechnic Institute, a place of order and established science. But Tesla was not a student to be contained by curriculum. He was a force of nature. His mind was a sponge, but it was also a forge. He didn't just study, he absorbed. He devoured entire textbooks in a single sitting, his photographic memory allowing him to recall every formula, every diagram, every lecture, word for word. Professors marveled not just at his genius, but at the sheer speed of his intellect. He could solve complex equations in his head, the answers appearing to him complete, without a single scribble of scratch paper. But his mind was never at peace. While others were content to master what was known, Tesla was consumed by a deeper mystery, the nature of electricity. In a lecture hall, he watched a demonstration of a primitive direct current, or DC motor. It was a clumsy, sparking machine. Its rotating parts plagued. Each spark was a tiny explosion of wasted energy, a sign of its fundamental inefficiency. To Tesla, it was a beautiful idea, poorly executed. There had to be a better way. A system where electricity could be clean, elegant, and powerful. The idea possessed him. What if, instead of forcing current in one constant direction, it could be made to flow back and forth, like the relentless rhythm of the ocean tide? Alternating current. To the professors, it was a radical thought. To Tesla, it wasn't just a theory, it was a physical law waiting to be discovered. It was his destiny. This obsession, though, drove him to the brink. He became a ghost in the institute, spending his nights consumed by books and calculations, sleeping only 2 or 3 hours. His professors, seeing the fire in his eyes, warned him that he was on a path to new ruin. They were right. He worked until his mind and body could take no more. Tesla collapsed. A full-blown, nervous breakdown, shattering his health and his academic career. His grades plummeted. He left Graz without a degree, a failure in the eyes of the world. He drifted from Graz to Prague, then on to Budapest, a young man haunted by his brilliant visions and the bitter taste of defeat. He was a genius without a diploma, a visionary with empty pockets. It was in Budapest, though, in the year 1882, that a new chapter began. Tesla, struggling to find work, would take long, quiet walks with a friend. To soothe his troubled mind, he would recite passages from the epic poem Proust. And then it happened. In the middle of reading a line, Tesla froze. The words died on his lips. His eyes, fixed on the setting sun, glazed over. This was not one of his blinding, chaotic visions. This was different. This was a complete mechanical design, a perfect three-dimensional blueprint that appeared in the air before him. He saw it. An alternating current induction motor. Its heart would be a rotating magnetic field, a principle no one had yet understood how to harness. There were no sparks, no wasted energy, just a silent, elegant machine of pure efficiency. He had seen it in its entirety, its every part fitting perfectly into place. Tesla dropped his walking stick. In his feverish excitement, he bent down and began to sketch the diagrams into the dust of the park path with its tip, explaining breathlessly to his companion the principle of the motor that would one day change the world. This was no idle daydream. This was the moment the seed of the modern electrical age was planted. Energized by his revelation, Tesla found work with the Central Telegraph Company in Budapest, and then as an engineer with the Continental Edison Company in Paris. His technical genius was undeniable. He solved engineering problems that baffled seasoned professionals. He was a fixer, a troubleshooter. But when he spoke of his visions of alternating current, he was met with polite skepticism. Europe was still under the spell of Thomas Edison's direct current. Edison was the wizard of Menlo Park, a celebrity whose inventions were lighting up the world. To challenge his system was to challenge the future itself. It was seen as impractical, dangerous, even foolish. Tesla's response was the same it would be for the rest of his life. He didn't argue with words, he did not debate. He simply built. And so began a journey that would lead him far from Europe, across the Atlantic, to a new land of opportunity and rivalry. In 1884, with only 4 cents in his pocket and a fateful letter of recommendation to Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla boarded a steamship bound for America. He was 28 years old, a genius with no degree, no wealth, and no status. Just his mind and a vision of a world powered by alternating current. Waiting for him, though, in New York was a man who would become both his greatest benefactor and his most bitter rival, Thomas Edison. June 1884. On the deck of the steamship Saturnia, Nikola Tesla stands with his back to the old world. In his pocket, a paltry 4 cents, a few handwritten poems, and a lifeline in the form of a letter of recommendation. It was addressed to the one man who might understand his visions, Thomas Edison. The journey itself was a crucible. Tesla was robbed of his money and his luggage by a pickpocketer. At one point, a mutiny broke out among the crew, and he narrowly escaped with his life. By the time he saw land, he had nothing but the clothes on his back, a burning sense of purpose, and the fire of genius in his mind. When he first laid eyes on the Statue of Liberty, he later wrote that he felt as though destiny itself awaited him in this new world. He was a man who had left everything behind, carrying nothing but a radical idea. He believed America was the place where that idea would finally take root. New York in the 1880s was a city in a state of chaotic, thrilling transformation. Gas lamps flickered with a warm, uncertain glow. The first electric arc lamps sizzled and hummed in the wealthier districts, and elevated railroads thundered overhead like mechanical beasts. To Tesla, it was a marvel, a place where his dreams of harnessing electricity might finally be realized. And so, clutching his letter of introduction, he walked to Edison's bustling downtown office, a pilgrimage to the most famous inventor in the world. Thomas Alva Edison was a legend, a self-made man from humble beginnings with little formal education. He had risen to global fame through sheer willpower and relentless practical approach to invention. Edison was not a man of grand theory. He was a man of tangible things that could be built, patented, and sold. He was as much a shrewd businessman as he was a brilliant thinker and tinkerer. Nikola Tesla, by contrast, was his polar opposite. Where Edison relied on endless trial and error, Tesla worked in his mind, visualizing every detail before ever touching a tool. Where Edison sought to light a bulb for profit, Tesla sought to unlock the hidden forces of the universe. When Tesla handed over his letter, Edison reportedly read it aloud, a wry smile on his face. The letter read, "My dear Edison, I know 2 great men. You are one of them. The other is this young man." Tesla was hired on the spot. He was immediately put to work on Edison's most pressing problems, redesigning the inefficient DC dynamos that powered his lightning system. Tesla's genius was immediately undeniable. Within weeks, he had solved a series of complex technical issues that Edison's entire team had wrestled with for years. But the differences between the 2 men were too fundamental to ignore. Edison was the unyielding champion of the direct current. He had built an empire on it, his lighting systems, his patents, his millions in profit. Tesla, however, knew DC was a dead end. It was inefficient, losing power over long distances. It was a local solution in a world that needed a global power grid. Tesla proposed his own system, alternating current, the radical system he had envisioned in Budapest. It was a power source that could be transmitted across entire nations and cities with minimal loss. But Edison dismissed it. He was a staunch traditionalist who was invested in his own technology. He called Tesla's AC impractical, dangerous, even deadly. He would later quip, "That's a magnificent theory, Mr. Tesla, but it's utterly worthless." The 2 men were on an inevitable collision course. The final break came over a promise. According to Tesla, Edison had told him, "If you can redesign my insufficient DC generators and make them more effective, I will pay you $50,000. Tesla worked day and night, transforming the generators into efficient, powerful machines. But when he went to collect his reward, Edison laughed, stating, "You don't understand our American humor," he said. The money of fortune at the time was a cruel joke. Tesla, with his pride wounded and his trust shattered, resigned on the spot. He had arrived in America with nothing, and now he was once again penniless. For a time, Tesla was forced into the bitterest of humiliations for a man of his intellect. He became a manual laborer, digging ditches for $2 a day. His hands, which had conceived of new electrical world, now only held a shovel. He would later write of this period, "My high education in various branches of science, mechanics, and literature seemed to be a mockery." It was a time of immense pain and doubt, but fate was not finished with him yet. In 1887, his luck finally turned. He found new investors who were willing to gamble on his radical ideas. With their backing, he opened a small laboratory in Manhattan and began to build the machines he had once only seen in his mind's eye. The world's first practical AC motor was born, and Tesla's path was about to collide with another figure who would change his destiny forever, a brilliant industrialist named George Westinghouse. The stage was set for one of the greatest clashes in the history of science and industry. It would be fought not with armies, but with currents. The War of the Currents. Edison's direct current versus Tesla's alternating current. And the prize was nothing less than the future of electricity itself, a battle for who would power the modern world. In a small, humble laboratory, a silent revolution is being born. Nikola Tesla unveils his greatest achievement to a few curious onlookers, the alternating current induction motor. It is a work of elegant simplicity, efficient beyond anything the world has yet seen, and utterly revolutionary. This quiet genius built a machine that is poised to change everything. And it soon catches the attention of a man who would either be his greatest ally or his undoing, George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was a railroad emperor, an industrialist, and an inventor in his own right, but he was everything Edison was not. For Edison was famously, fiercely protective of his direct current patents, Westinghouse was bold, a risk-taker who was always looking for the next big idea. He saw in Tesla's AC system not just a machine, but a very foundation of the modern electrical grid, a way to power an entire nation. He moved quickly, recognizing a genius in Tesla that others had dismissed. Westinghouse made Tesla an offer that was unheard of at the time, a staggering $60,000 in cash, plus stock in his company, and an ongoing royalty of $2.50 for every horsepower of electricity produced from his patents. It was a king's ransom. For the very first time in his life, Tesla was not merely surviving, he was thriving. He had the money to fund his research, the recognition he deserved, and the backing of a powerful ally to bring his world-changing vision to life. But standing in his way was the titan of invention, the wizard of Menlo Park, the man who had scorned him. Thomas Edison was not about to let his empire crumble without a fight. Edison had built his life on direct current. His lighting systems, his reputation, his immense fortune, all of it was staked on his DC technology. Now, Tesla's alternating current threatened to sweep it all away. So Edison launched a vicious, desperate propaganda campaign. He was a master of public relations, and he used every ounce of his influence to demonize AC. He declared it unsafe, deadly, and a menace to society. He held gruesome public demonstrations where stray animals, dogs, cats, even a calf and a horse, were electrocuted with alternating current. The goal was simple and chilling: to equate AC with death in the public's eye. The press, of course, ate it up. Headlines blared warnings: "Beware alternating current. Tesla's device is dangerous." Ordinary people, already nervous about this new invisible power, began to fear the system that would power their future. This campaign of fear became known as the War of the Currents. In one of the darkest turns, Edison's team secretly lobbied for alternating current to be used in New York's new method of capital punishment, the electric chair. Their reasoning was clear: to tie AC to the most gruesome of deaths. The first execution, in 1890, was a botched, prolonged, and horrific spectacle. It served Edison's purpose perfectly. To many, AC became synonymous with the face of death itself. Tesla was horrified, but he refused to engage in such a smear campaign. He believed in the power of his work to speak for itself. He kept his distance, leaving the fight to his champion, George Westinghouse, who fought back not with fear, but with light. In 1893, the World's Columbian Exposition opened in Chicago, an event meant to celebrate progress in industry. The contract to illuminate the entire fairgrounds became the ultimate prize in the War of the Currents. Edison's company, now part of the massive General Electric, bid high, confident in their victory. But Westinghouse, armed with Tesla's AC system, underbid them, promising a superior product at a lower cost. The result was a spectacle that stunned the world. For the first time in history, an entire city's fairgrounds, a place of unparalleled scale and grandeur, was lit with alternating current. The white city shone with this dazzling, otherworldly glow. Streets, buildings, and fountains were all bathed in brilliant electric light, a beacon of modernity. Tesla himself was a star of the fair. He stood before awestruck crowds, demonstrating his inventions and proving that AC was safe. In a stunning display, he allowed thousands of volts of alternating current to pass through his body, causing light bulbs in his hands to glow without him feeling a thing. He had disproved Edison's dark campaign with a single, breathtaking act. It was a decisive victory. AC had triumphed. The final nail in the coffin of Edison's DC empire came soon after, at one of the world's most powerful natural wonders, Niagara Falls. The dream of harnessing its sheer power to generate electricity had captivated engineers for decades. The contract to build the power station was awarded to Westinghouse, and the system chosen was Tesla's alternating current. When the power station went online in 1896, transmitting electricity 26 miles to Buffalo, New York, it was hailed as one of the great engineering marvels of the age. Alternating current was no longer just a theory, no longer a dangerous world novelty. It was the undisputed future. Tesla had won the War of the Currents. His genius now powered cities, industries, and homes across the world. For a brief moment, he stood at the pinnacle of success, his place in history secured. But his story was far from finished, for beyond the triumphs of AC, beyond even the battle with Edison, Tesla dreamed of something greater. Power without wires. Energy transmitted freely through the air itself. And that dream would ultimately consume him. At the height of his fame, Nikola Tesla was a celebrity in his own right, captivating audiences with dazzling displays of electricity. However, even as he thrived among New York's elite, his mind was consumed by an obsession with a new, radical vision: wireless power transmission. This dream would ultimately lead him to gamble everything, blurring the line between genius and madness. At the pinnacle of his success, riding the wave of his triumph in the War of the Currents, Nikola Tesla was no longer just an inventor. He was a showman, a performer who commanded the stage like a magician. Audiences packed lecture halls to witness his stunning demonstrations. He wasn't just building machines, he was conjuring the future before their very eyes. He would unleash bolts of electricity from his massive Tesla coils, streams of white-hot current dancing through the air, hissing and crackling like miniature lightning storms. The crowd would gasp as he stood calmly, his tall, thin frame bathed in the eerie glow of the art. The newspapers, of course, loved him. They called him a wizard, a magician of electricity. His tall, aristocratic stature, piercing eyes, and dramatic flair only added to his mystique. Unlike Edison, who was a man of the factory floor, Tesla was a visionary who seemed to belong to a higher plane. He had turned the cold, hard science of engineering into an art form. In New York, the victor of the War of Currents found himself welcomed into the highest echelons of the Gilded Age society. He dined at exclusive restaurants like Delmonico's, mingling with industrialists like J.P. Morgan and artists, writers, and politicians. One of his closest friends was the legendary author Mark Twain, who was captivated by Tesla's intellect and his fantastical inventions. Twain would often visit Tesla's lab to see the latest marvels. On one such famous occasion, Twain stood on a vibrating platform of Tesla's invention, enjoying the strange sensation until, as the story goes, it upset his digestion rather suddenly, sending him scrambling off. For a time, Tesla was a magnet for money, fame, and admiration. He was the toast of the town. But he was also deeply peculiar. He never married, claiming that a scientist must remain a solitary figure, dedicating all of his energy to his work. He lived a life governed by a strict, eccentric routine. He would only eat at specific restaurants, used white gloves to avoid germs, and had a strange obsession with the number 3, often walking around a building 3 times before entering. Some saw these quirks as the mark of a creative genius. Others, however, whispered that he was simply strange, bordering on madness. Even as he basked in this new celebrity, Tesla's restless mind had already moved on. The world was now being built on his alternating current, but he wasn't satisfied with a future constrained by wires. He had a new, all-consuming vision. He dreamed of a world of wireless energy. He believed he could transmit electricity to the Earth itself, through the atmosphere, to power a new age of machines, all without a single wire. This wasn't just a new invention, it was an idealistic goal. He envisioned free, unlimited power for all mankind. To Tesla, this was not a fantastical notion. It was a scientific certainty, an inevitability, and he was willing to devote the rest of his life and gamble everything, his fortune, his reputation, and his future, to make this dream a reality. The War of the Currents had made Tesla a victor. Niagara had cemented his legacy as a legend. But now his mind soared far beyond even those triumphs. His new visions bordered on the fantastical, machines that could transmit energy across oceans, and inventions that could, he claimed, even shake the very earth. But soon, the line between brilliant science and an unachievable dream would begin to blur. By the close of the 80s, Nikola Tesla had achieved a feat few believed possible. His alternating current system was powering cities, industries, and homes across the world. His name was now celebrated alongside industrial giants like Edison and Westinghouse. But while the world reveled in his success, Tesla was restless. The War of the Currents was over, but for him, it was only the beginning. He had won the battle of electricity, but his ultimate dream was to free it from the shackles of wires entirely. He envisioned a new world where energy flowed freely through the very earth and atmosphere, a global network of power that reached every home, every machine, every person without a single cable. It was audacious, it was deemed impossible, and it would consume the rest of his life. Tesla's laboratory in Colorado Springs became the stage for his boldest, most fantastic experiments. Here, in 1899, he constructed his magnifying transmitter, a colossal coil capable of generating millions of volts of electricity. Eyewitnesses described a scene of pure, unbridled power. Bolts of artificial lightning, some over 100 feet long, would leap into the air, while the thunderous cracks shook the earth for miles around. Sparks flew from metal objects across the lab, and electrical currents flowed through the ground itself, causing light bulbs to glow in the earth without any wires. Tesla was convinced he had tapped into what he called the natural electrical resonance of the earth. He believed entire cities could one day be powered without a single wire. Ships at sea could draw energy from the air, and humanity would finally be free of the need for fuel. It was a vision of a world without limits, powered by the planet itself. Inspired by his success in Colorado, Tesla began his most ambitious project yet in 1901, the Wardenclyffe Tower. This massive structure, rising 187 feet into the sky and crowned with a gleaming steel dome, was funded in part by the most powerful financier of the age, J.P. Morgan. Tesla told Morgan the tower was for transatlantic wireless communication, an early radio system meant to rival Marconi. But Tesla's true dream was far grander. He intended to turn Wardenclyffe into a transmitter of wireless power to the entire planet. But as the power and project grew, so did the costs. When Morgan realized Tesla's true goal was not just communication, but a system that would give away energy for free, he withdrew his support. For what financier would invest in a technology that provided a service for no profit? The money dried up, and Tesla's dream began to crumble. The magnificent tower stood incomplete, a monument to a vision that was too grand for its time. It was eventually abandoned, sold for scrap, becoming the greatest failure of Tesla's career. In the midst of his struggles, Tesla also laid claim to an invention that would shape the 20th century: radio. As early as 1893, he had demonstrated wireless transmission of signals. His patents laid out much of the groundwork for the technology. However, in 1901, an Italian inventor named Guglielmo Marconi successfully transmitted a signal across the Atlantic, and the world hailed him as the father of the radio. Tesla was furious. He accused Marconi of using 17 of his patents. The legal battles dragged on for years, a testament to Tesla's bitterness and his dwindling resources. It was not until 1943, months after Tesla's death, that the U.S. Supreme Court finally upheld his patents, posthumously recognizing him as the true pioneer of radio. But the world was already moving on from Tesla. His inventions became stranger, more eccentric. He once claimed to have built a small pocket-sized mechanical oscillator that, when attached to a steel beam, caused buildings to tremble with rhythmic vibrations. He famously called it his earthquake machine. In his later years, he spoke of his most terrifying vision yet: a death ray, or teleforce weapon. He claimed it was a particle beam capable of shooting down airplanes from hundreds of miles away. Tesla insisted it was a defensive tool designed to end war by making nations impregnable. But whether his invention was real or simply a product of his isolated and increasingly desperate imagination remains a mystery. To some, It was a testament to his continued genius. To others, a final sign of his mental decline. Tesla's greatest triumphs were behind him. His dreams of wireless power had collapsed at Wardenclyffe. His rivals had claimed credit for his inventions. His visions grew more eccentric, his finances more desperate. From the dizzying heights of fame, Nikola Tesla began his slow, painful descent into obscurity. Long Island, a skeletal monument to ambition, stood against the sky. The Wardenclyffe Tower, erected in 1901, never finished. A colossal transmitter of wireless power, designed to illuminate the entire globe. Its wooden scaffolding rotted, its steel dome rusted, and it became less a beacon of progress and more a monument to a dream that was too big for the Gilded Age. In 1917, fearing it could be used by German spies, the U.S. government ordered its demolition. For Tesla, it was not just the loss of a tower. It was the final, crushing death of his life's greatest vision. Tesla had once been a wealthy man, flush with royalties from his agreements with Westinghouse. However, years earlier, in an act of extraordinary selflessness, he had surrendered those lucrative rights to help save Westinghouse Company from financial collapse. Now, with the failure of Wardenclyffe, he had nothing left. He was forced to declare bankruptcy, his lab equipment auctioned off to pay his debts. Many of his patents expired, and his brilliant ideas were often stolen by rivals. The man who had given the world light now wandered from hotel to hotel in New York City, his bills often unpaid, his meals meager. He had faded from the public eye, becoming a recluse. For years he lived in hotel rooms, first the Waldorf Astoria, then the New Yorker, governed by a strict, almost ritualistic set of eccentric habits. He dined alone, always at the same table, at precisely the same hour. He demanded stacks of napkins, using dozens in a single meal to meticulously polish his utensils. He avoided touching hair, disliked pearls, and counted his steps obsessively, always making sure they were divisible by 3. To many, he was just a curious, brilliant oddball. To others, he seemed to have finally crossed the line into madness. In his final, lonely years, Nikola Tesla formed a peculiar bond with the pigeons of Bryant Park. He would spend his last dollars on seeds to feed them daily, and would often bring injured birds back to his hotel room, nursing them back to health. One pigeon in particular, a beautiful white bird with gray-tipped wings, became his favorite. He believed she would follow him wherever he went, and he once confessed, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman. As long as I had her, there was purpose to my life." When she died, Tesla said a light went out of his world. It was a heartbreaking image. The man who had dreamed of illuminating the entire planet, left with nothing but the companionship of a few birds in a city that had largely forgotten his name. In the 1930s, Tesla lived his final years in the New Yorker hotel. Occasionally, on his birthday, he would grant interviews to reporters, speaking of grand, futuristic inventions, machines to harness cosmic rays, devices to end war forever. Some journalists dismissed him as a delusional old man. Others saw him in the spark of genius he once was. But the truth was clear. Tesla's golden age was long past. On January 1943, Nikola Tesla died alone in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. He was 86 years old. The maid who discovered him found the room filled with stacks of notes, drawings, and unfinished manuscripts. His papers were immediately seized by the FBI, who feared he might have left behind designs for a secret weapon, perhaps even the death ray he had spoken of. Much of what they found remains shrouded in secrecy to this day. Tesla was eventually given a small funeral, but later a state funeral was held in New York City where thousands came to pay their respects. For many, it was a moment of reflection, but it felt to some like it was too little, too late. The man who had given the world light had died in darkness. Tesla's fall was tragic. A man, once at the height of fame and fortune, reduced to a lonely, eccentric existence. But death was not the end of his story. In the years that followed, the world would begin to remember the man who was ahead of his time. His name lifted from the shadows. His myth would grow, and his genius would be celebrated anew. When Nikola Tesla died in 1943, he was a forgotten figure. But in the decades that followed, his name was resurrected and transformed into a powerful legend. His posthumous recognition as the father of the radio and other modern technologies, combined with the mystique surrounding his later life, cemented his status as a cultural icon synonymous with misunderstood genius and visionary innovation. When Nikola Tesla died alone in his hotel room, he was, for the most part, a forgotten man. He had been overshadowed by Edison, ignored by the financiers of the Gilded Age, and dismissed by many as an eccentric. The world was already using his inventions, but few remembered the man behind them. But death did not extinguish his flame. In many ways, it only made his light brighter. In the decades that followed, Tesla's name rose again, gradually transformed from a historical footnote into a legend. Just a few months after his passing, the U.S. Supreme Court delivered a final monumental verdict on the matter of the radio patents. They affirmed what Tesla had claimed for decades, that many of Marconi's breakthroughs were built on Tesla's foundational inventions. The ruling, though tragically late, finally recognized Tesla as one of the true fathers of the radio. As historians, engineers, and scientists dug into his work, they began to uncover the full extent of his far-reaching genius. His mind had laid the groundwork for countless technologies that would define the 20th century and beyond. Alternating current, wireless communication, the remote control, fluorescent lighting, and even the robotics that would one day power modern factories. Tesla's fingerprints were everywhere. As his name was restored to the history books, Tesla's legacy began to transcend history itself. It became a myth. His eccentrics, his grand vision of free wireless energy and terrifying death rays, captured the imagination of a world ready for heroes. He was not a man of simple business. He was a tragic figure who dreamed of giving humanity limitless power. Science fiction writers made him a character, an archetype of the mad genius. Conspiracy theorists claimed he held secrets that were too dangerous for the world to know, a prophet of free energy who was suppressed by greedy corporations. To some, he was the ultimate hero, the misunderstood genius who stood for progress over profit. Tesla had become more than a man. He was an idea, a symbol of what could have been. By the 21st century, the name Tesla was a household word. The International Unit of Magnetic Flux Density was named the Tesla in his honor. His image appeared in countless books, films, and video games. And, perhaps most famously, a groundbreaking electric car company adopted his name, Tesla Motors, symbolizing a return to a spirit of radical innovation. Today, the name Tesla is synonymous with brilliance, visionary thinking, and the boundless potential of human ingenuity. But Tesla's legacy is a dual one, a testament to both incredible triumph and profound tragedy. He was a man who gave the world light, but died in darkness. He imagined wireless power for all, but could not find the means to build it. He was a man ahead of his time, perhaps too far ahead for the world to understand. Tesla once said with a quiet, knowing confidence, "The present is theirs. The future, for which I have really worked, is mine." And in the end, he was right. Nikola Tesla was a man born in a storm, the flash of lightning across the sky the night he entered the world. And like that lightning, his life was brilliant, blinding, and fleeting. He gave us light, power, and vision. He dreamed of a future we are only now beginning to glimpse. He was the master of lightning, and his current still runs throughout the world. And so ends the grand story of Nikola Tesla, a man of profound brilliance and heart-wrenching contradictions. Born in the fury of a storm, he was destined to command the lightning itself. He lit our world, and in doing so, he saw a future more luminous than any we could have imagined. Yet, in his final years, he was left in darkness, forgotten by the very world his genius had created. His life reminds us that true genius can be lonely, fragile, and often misunderstood thing. But it also teaches us that a singular vision, held with unshakable conviction, can outlast time itself. He was a hero who saw a tomorrow we are only now beginning to touch. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the life of Nikola Tesla, the master of lightning. Next time on Historical Insights, we turn from the electrifying storm of Tesla's imagination to the world of a woman who quietly and persistently reinvented invention itself. We will explore the remarkable story of Beulah Louise Henry. Known to the world simply as Lady Edison, she was one of the most prolific female inventors of the early 20th century, a time when women were rarely recognized for their intellectual contributions. With over 100 patent inventions to her name, including a groundbreaking vacuum ice cream freezer and the first widely used doll with moving eyes, Henry was a creative force of nature. She was a woman who refused to be defined by her era, carving out a place for herself in a field dominated by men. Her story is a testament to the power of creativity, the quiet persistence of genius, and the hidden history of women and innovation. Join me as we uncover her incredible life.